has to face Neil Denise, the league's leading hitter, batting at a .336 clip.
Please, have your house pets spayed or neutered. Call us. We can help.
Sit up. Sit up. Up, up.
Each year, more and more dogs die from heartworm infection. Preventing heartworm disease used to be difficult, but now it's easy. Speak to your veterinarian. Find out how important prevention is and how convenient it can be. Stop heartworm disease. It's something simple you can learn to do for him.
Welcome back. The Boston Herald's books and travel editor, Mark Chapman, is a man of diverse talents whose journalism career began when he was 15 years old and covering sports for his local newspaper, which he continued to do for the next 10 years. Had this been his only talent, it would have been enough for one person. But it isn't. A Cape Cod native whose family was involved with professional summer stock theater, from birth to age 23, Mark spent his summers at the Cape Cod Melody Tent. He attended Berklee School of Music as a trombone major, but left for a theatrical career, either performing or working in a technical capacity at such theaters as Smithville Theater near Atlantic City, the Chateau de Ville dinner theaters in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, and the Royal Poinciana Playhouse in Palm Beach, Florida. After he was married, he began to work as a journalist full-time at several newspapers, including the Cape Cod Times and Brockton Enterprise, plus daily papers in Vero Beach, Florida, and Wilmington, North Carolina, as well as non-dailies on Cape Cod, in Mansfield, Massachusetts, and in South Carolina. Mark has been a sports reporter and talk show host for several radio stations on Cape Cod and in Atlantic City, had his own cable sports show on Cape Cod, and is currently one of the revolving panelists on New England Cable News Network's live Sunday call-in show, Totally Travel. As if all of this weren't enough for one man, he has sung in nightclubs on Cape Cod and in Atlantic City, produced fundraising shows, managed a professional boxer, and has recently been acting in community theater on Cape Cod. He is currently producing and performing in a Broadway review in Barnstable to raise money for an art scholarship fund set up in his father's memory. It's not only exciting, it's exhausting just reading about it. And I'm sure it's only the short list. Hi, Mark. Thank you for coming to Creatively Speaking.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad to see you here. Tell me how all of this started for you. We've talked a little bit, but this goes way back.
I don't know. I woke up one day and just found myself immersed in it. Literally. I mean, the joke in the family used to be that I was born on a tent bag. Because the year I was born, my father, of course, was working with the Cape Cod Melody Tent. And it wasn't long after that my mother joined in as a wardrobe mistress. And
oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so the whole family was really backstage.
They really were. Both my brothers and my sister, who are considerably older, did work there as well. But I was the one who stuck with it. They all went their own ways. My mother was there for about 8 years, so all through my formative years, I was being exposed to the arts, and I think that's really what did it. And I stayed with it after my mother got out. I stayed with it as long as my father was there.
And it was just an ongoing part of your life then, from birth, really.
It really was the way I identified myself. I wasn't too interested in what was going on in school and what was going on during the winter. My whole self-identity was wrapped up in doing kid parts in shows at the Melody Tent, and all the things that went on there, the music, the characters that I'd meet.
Oh, yeah.
There were a number of those.
Yes, and we can't necessarily name names, can we?
I'll save that for the book.
Okay,
but,
I hope you're writing one.
But I'll talk to the lawyer too. But seriously, it was an experience, just 20 plus years of experience that I just can't imagine having not been through. I mean, it was just wonderful. I would not have changed 1 minute of it.
Wow. Very few people can say that. Now, how'd you end up as a trombone major at Berklee? And why the trombone?
Well, it's funny. They came around. Of course, I was into music already because of the Melody Tent. I used to sit and listen to the orchestra rehearsals all the time. And when I was in 4th grade, I guess it was, they came around with instruments, the band director.
Oh, I remember that.
Stimulate interest, and they'd call on kids to come up to try the trumpet or try the saxophone. And I had always really liked the sound of the saxophone. But I didn't get called on to go up and blow on the saxophone. I got called on to come up and blow the trombone. And I got a sound out of it. And I went home and told my parents I wanted to play the trombone. I still was thinking about saxophone, but I started thinking, there's so many of those keys, I don't know how I'd ever get those fingers through. Trombone, you just do this thing, you know.
Sure, the slide.
So I went with the trombone, and I stuck with that up. I was ready to give it up after 8th grade because
Really?
Yeah, well, I was kind of bored. The band director was kind of a boring kind of guy. I hope he's never going to see this. But,
We'll ship him a
I
copy.
won't mention the name. But he wasn't stimulating the interest, and a new fellow who is now one of the professors over at Berklee College of Music, John Hagen, came in and took over the high school program, and this man stimulated the interest big time.
Oh.
He started a stage band. He was encouraging and not discouraging. He was more like one of the guys than he was a teacher. And a lot of us responded to that, and a lot of people went on in music. I went on to Berklee and realized that after I got there, that I would never make a living as a player. I didn't want to be a teacher. And I dropped out and just went back to doing what I had been doing all my life, and that was theater.
Which do you prefer, on stage or behind the scenes? Because you've done both, you do both.
I did both extensively, and I much prefer being on stage.
Do you really?
Oh, yes. I don't think I could go backstage again. In fact, when I work with community theater now or professional performances, I have no desire to go back to designing lights or anything, except maybe in the business end, the producing end or directing. But I like to be on stage. I like to perform.
You like the applause? Or the immediate gratification of the response of the other actors? Or
It's the emotional connection. It's the emotional connection first with the material.
Okay.
I'm most comfortable with music, with singing. And to feel the emotional connection with the song and to be able to convey that to the audience, that's my favorite thing. And that's what I also like about writing. If I can turn out a good column or a good feature and have people come up to me and say, I read such and such a piece and I really liked, and they'll quote something back to me. That's a connection. I've had some sort of impact on that person.
so then creating as an actor and creating as a writer, you find a great similarity. If you can create one, you can create the scene or the place or the sense.
I think that's very true. And I think that's why I gravitated toward writing, which I started doing on a fluke, much like I started playing the trombone on a fluke.
How did that first writing assignment come about?
I used to play basketball. I played all sports, sandlot sports. I wasn't good enough, fast enough. I've always been big, and I wasn't quite good enough for the school teams. And we had some dynamite teams back then. But I played basketball in a recreational league. It was an organized league, very competitive. We had a lot of good players, and I had been an all-star actually in 8th grade. 9th grade, of course, you move into that next level, and I was a bench warmer. And I was really looking forward to making a breakthrough in my sophomore year, and I had, all of a sudden, woke up one day after doing a parade in the marching band, and my knee was about twice the size it was supposed to be. And I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. They wound up draining the knee. They couldn't figure out what it was, but they told me no physical activity to speak of for several months. And that put me out of commission, and I was just devastated. Tryouts for the basketball league were coming up in a couple of days. Felt awful, but I figured, well, we never got any publicity. Joe Sherman was the sports editor of the old Cape Cod Standard Times. He's now the Sunday editor of the Brockton Enterprise, and Joe really is responsible in a big way for a lot of my newspaper career. And I went to this guy. I didn't know who he was, but I started sending him stories on the basketball league. I'd cover the games. I had never done that before, but I read the sports pages. And Joe had been running a lot of youth hockey stuff. And I said, I'd really like you to do the basketball. And he said, well, we can't use this but would you like to come, we like your writing, would you like to come write for us
Wow.
and get paid? I said, sure. What do you want me to cover? He said, youth hockey. Well, I felt like a traitor, but I did it, and that started me. And I had no intention. When Joe left there, another fellow took over, and when I was in high school, I was offered the chance to be submitted for a scholarship to Villanova for a journalism major, and I turned him down because I had no intention of ever doing newspaper for a living. I was going to do music and or theater. And that was that. I wrote between theater jobs. I wrote just as a way to make some money when I wasn't working for Chateau de Ville or something.
Isn't that funny? Never say never, I guess, is the lesson there.
Well, yes and no. If I had gone to college for the journalism scholarship, I never would have done all those years at Chateau de Ville Dinner Theaters. I wouldn't have done the Roe Poinciana Playhouse. I wouldn't have met my wife at Smithville Theater.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
But you balance both. I mean, it's wonderful. You managed to do both. You're out traveling all the time, or almost all the time. It seems that way.
I try to be.
Yeah.
It's a bone of contention between my boss and me, but yes, I try to be out as much as possible.
Well, you take us with you. I mean, when we read it, we get to go with you.
Yeah. Well, I try to do that, and I do a lot of cruises. First of all, I'll say something. I'll let your viewers in on a little secret. Is I hate flying.
Oh.
I'm a travel editor who hates flying for lots and lots of reasons, but I've never liked planes, and I prefer cruise ships. I prefer the train. I prefer driving, and I think that planes, just putting everything else aside, you miss so much. You get on the airplane. You go to Logan Airport. You get on the airplane. You go up in the air, you come down, you're at another airport, you get whisked to your hotel somewhere, and you miss everything in between. One of the greatest joys of my childhood was when my father would decide we were going on a trip, and back then it was, the guy decides, the husband decides, the wife just sort of goes along. My father would decide we were going to go south or to Niagara Falls or out to, Ohio or something, and we'd all pile into the car. And we would drive. And we'd drive 3 or 4 days sometimes, go to Miami a lot. We'd drive, and we'd stop, and he'd always be pointing out the interesting things. We'd never take super highways.
So you
We'd
got
always
to
take
see
the
everything.
country roads. And I just developed a real affinity for that, for seeing America, the real America. I mean, we're so insulated here in the Northeast. We think in the Northeast that this is the be-all and end-all. This is civilization, and the rest of the country's hicks. And that's just not true. We're the oddballs up here. This little part of the country is different from everywhere else.
But I think that's one of the things you do with the Herald is bring the rest of the country to the Herald readers and open that up. I mean, a lot of your articles, even though you do cover Europe and you do the cruises and all of that, there's a lot of what's going on in this country.
That is
there's
my
a lot
goal.
to see.
Is
it really?
That's my focus.
Okay, then I've picked up on something there. It really
Yes.
is. It wasn't my imagination. It really is.
No, that is definitely my focus, is to do doable travel, to do the things. And I don't have any money. A lot of people who travel all the time have money stashed away, and they'll take these trips and they'll fly to Europe like you or I'll take a drive down to the corner store. But I can't do that. The only reason I can travel now is because it's part of my job. So I go places that the average guy or the average woman wants to go. The families, the blue-collar worker. I call myself the tacky beachside resort writer. Because so many travel writers concentrate on exotic locations and all these esoteric places. Nobody sends me stories about Virginia Beach. Nobody sends me stories about Myrtle Beach. Nobody even was sending stories up until this year, really, on South Beach, Miami Beach. And even though that became a very hot place. So these are the places that I go. Atlantic City. I go these places and I try to bring out what's best in them there.
Well, the nice thing is you not only take us, but you make us realize that it's accessible for everybody else. We can do what you can do.
Right.
It's not the Amazon.
Right, exactly. And there's a place for armchair travel. It's usually down on Morrissey Boulevard. Sorry, Jerry. Or Condé Nast Traveler magazine does a great job with that.
Right.
Travel and Leisure. Armchair travel, or for the people who have the money and can afford to do these things. But hey, I never thought cruising would be accessible until I did it. And actually, it's a very, very good way to travel. It's a way to see a lot of places, to have a relaxing vacation, and not spend a lot of money. You know what you're going to spend up front.
That's great.
Yeah.
You've taken us so many wonderful places. We have no time left. We're going to have you back because we want to talk about more theater and more of everything and more and more and more. I don't know how we ran out of time like this, Mark. This is just great.
I don't know. I heard a little buzzer go off on my wrist here. I knew we were in trouble.
It's been wonderful having you here. I hope you'll come back again.
I'll come back anytime you want.
Oh, I'd have you back for every show if I could work that out. I think it's terrific. We've got so much to talk about. I mean, we haven't even talked about the professional boxer and all the theater work you've got coming up now and all sorts of things. So this is just a really nice taste of what you do, and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you
I
very
appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. Come back and see us again next time we're Creatively Speaking.